got a bunch of fun quotes from this book that actually are extremely relevant in today's day. So,
What book is it?
discourses concerning government,
Boy.
written written in 1681 by one of the two fellows that my school that I went to is named after. Never
Okay.
really, I'd never really dug into. I knew his relative history, but I'd never picked up his book before and read it. So over the last, it's actually that book there.
Okay.
It's like 700 pages long, and it took me like a month to finish. It was terrible, but it's got some quotes and kind of frameworks that are still extremely relevant in 2026. So a long time going that this book has kind of been very forthcoming in the terms of, hey, these are relatively repetitive issues that most governments and civilizations are going to face, and it is surely no different. And there's very brief periods of relative liberty that actually exists, and then it falls back down the arbitrary rulings of very narcissistic people who believe that they know what's best for everybody when that is rarely ever the case.
As the cliche goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I
Yes, you would
think
be exactly right.
human human nature hasn't really changed. You put, the backgrounds and kind of the technologies, yeah, we've advanced in that, but I think there's a primal thing in our brains as a species that when you put someone in power, there's this inherent need to stay in power because it feels safe, I think. I have never been in positions of power, but just as a observation from the outside to see what's going on today with the lens of holy shit, there are human beings that have power over society. When you really think deeply about it, it blows your mind. It's like, how does that even work out?
Yeah, and just the relative complete misunderstanding that power ultimately resonates with each and every individual. And the book kind of goes through the ontology of kind of not only human beings from a very again, this was 1600s Christianity that we're covering here, but a very very rooted foundation in that all men are truly created equal. This book, the author's name is Algernon Sidney, as in the school that I went to is Hampton Sydney College, and both John Hampton and Algernon Sidney were both alive during the English Civil War and a lot of very very volatile times in England from about 1630 to the late 1600s, 1680. Both of them were actually killed. Um, one of them in battle, the other one, Algernon Sidney, he was actually killed for writing this book. He was beheaded by the King of England. So yeah, the book does a pretty good job of explaining why absolute monarchy is very inefficient. And of course, in 1681, if you write about that, you're usually killed. But he spent a lot of time, kind of like he was forced to move away from England for a very long time. He was considered a radical. Um, a bunch of people didn't really understand that there's much better ways to govern. And so he did a lot of time studying and researching and literally attempting to persuade foreign powers to invade England so they could recapture sovereignty for the individuals of England. So he's a very interesting guy, but the book does a really good job of breaking it down and really highlighting a lot of what the Roman Empire and why it was able to succeed in the first half of its life was built on a very virtuous society where each and every individual, not only male or female, but um, obviously nothing's perfect, so there were still slaves during that society, but everyone had a general understanding of how to act and why you're acting in this manner. So it's very interesting, but again, we'll get more into it. But again, the world is in a very, very odd place when it comes to, hey, we're just going to listen to this guy because the guns are pointed
Yeah,
at us more or less than actually questioning why the guns have to be pointed at you in the first place.
exactly that. What you just said a couple minutes ago, where his views were considered extreme, means the alternative is I need someone in power to tell me how to live in some way, shape, or form or fashion. And that is considered normal. And once you kind of come out of that, break out of that matrix, it's like you look at the whole world completely differently. And we've seen it, all throughout. We've seen it all throughout history, and we've seen it playing out today with people who want their flavor of master to tell them how to live and rule over them. And the one side doesn't like the other side. They want a different colored master, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, you would be exactly right. And it's crazy. You and I have both pulled ourselves out, thankfully, of that doom loop of what I consider the outsourcing of responsibility when it comes to control and ultimately how one should act. Again, there's just not many people or times that have really ever understood what a true like constitutional republic, in our case, a constitutional republic looks like. Again, and this book also covers the idea of like, there is really only, because again, think about it right now. Like, can you tell me a lot about your great grandfather?
Almost nothing. In fact,
Exact,
zero.
exactly.
Probably
So,
zero.
you're pretty much two generations after the second generation of really anybody. Those thoughts and ideologies are either physically dead, or you really have no way to account for like what was like actually happening. Again, we're taking history from somebody's perspective. So this again, it also kind of talks through like the Roman Republic that existed, its ideologies, and this is a much different time. There are far less what I call distractions out there, and people were actually like attempting to verse themselves in civic society,
Right.
which it most definitely does not happen today at the scale that it should. But again, you are really two generations removed from. After those two generations, you don't really know what they were thinking and why they were thinking it because they physically are not here.
Yeah. And there
And
was no
that's why
record of it.
exactly. And that's why you see so many people who misconstrue and ultimately defamate the Constitution of the United States in various fashions.
I think just on that, the number one reason I like doing this podcast, I mean, is so that I can document what I'm thinking based on the times, and hopefully it can become a historical record for my future generations. To at least have some reference point of what was going on, so that they can use that, in context going forward. Um, and
Yeah,
yeah,
but in all,
there were less distractions in the Roman times, but there were still distractions. There were groups in power that, it said that the gladiators were there to distract the common folk from what was actually happening in politics. They would put on these shows with athletes, that had physical altercations. That was a great distraction for the people, to not be aware of what was actually going on behind their backs while they were getting debased.
yeah, I have this argument with a group of friends of mine, and I kind of very similarly kind of draw the comparisons between like the modern NFL, which I am a full fan of. I think it's very enjoyable to watch, but like they literally have a stranglehold on so many American. I know so many people, especially in the area that I live in. I know so many people who spend their entire Sunday watching football, like a full day of the week,
Yeah.
half of the year, not half of the year, but a fourth of the year.
It's the whole day, but then it's also
It's li
what they're
yeah,
thinking of from Monday to Saturday
yeah,
night.
yeah,
You know,
you're
you catch the
exactly
game
right.
last night?
Yeah,
It's
no, you're exactly right, and it's, like, crazy to like, that is like, imagine how much time could be spent, like, maybe questioning other things.
yeah.
Again, I was hopelessly enslaved by it for the longest time. Now I at least only watch 1 game a week, which is, my team, go Birds, but, um it is very crazy, like, to draw. some comparisons of, and again, I hope I'm wrong, but history is showing me them potentially not wrong when it comes to where we are in the American Empire and the Roman Empire. Yeah, you have a lot of individuals who are just, I hate to use the word mindlessly, but it's not really there. I mean, people can be easily manipulated, and the term
Yes.
manufactured consent comes to mind. There are powers at be that have embedded themselves for quite some time, and we'll get into what we believe is the root there with the Fed. But again, I want to pull up a clip that I was rewatching a podcast from Robert Breedlove, so we'll screen share and take a look at this. But like, this was like a 10-minute, 8-minute maybe, I can't remember, but it was just a clip from. I'll get this pulled up so we can share it. But it's pretty much just talking about the idea that like, if you have the ability, and again, this is all that this podcast is really based on. If this issue didn't exist, this podcast wouldn't exist. But like, when you have the ability to print money and buy goods and services, you can literally manipulate and do anything you
Everything.
want. As long as that money is still valued, which again, there's at least some minor restrictions on there, and they can't just hyperinflate the currency tomorrow because it would end up like the Zimbabwe situation that you're very familiar with. But again, you have that's been a fundamental issue. And the moment that there is a group of what I call the globalist narcissists or the authoritarian narcissists that believe that they know exactly the way that 7 or 8 billion people should be run,
Yeah.
you run into major issues. I'm gonna get this
That's the
pulled
one
up.
thing I've written down here on my notes. I said this concept of imposing discipline on a centralized power structure. And this centralized power structure has the ability to increase the amount of units that we use as purchasing power. And when they can do that, they dilute you. And when they can dilute you and debase you, they have you're a slave. Essentially, you're a slave. You have different degrees of slavery, and there are people that are optically doing very well by comparison to the rest of them, and they see no problem with the current system. But if you just think about the concept that someone has the ability to print these currency units that you have to work for, it doesn't compute, cannot compute.
Yeah, it is. And it's also very like disheartening the moment that you like really fundamentally put two and two together. It's like you then look back to like all of your generations prior to you who just like mindlessly, and I'm not saying the word, I hate to use the word mindlessly, like, but there's this is just never talked about in many, many, many circles of what I call your basic Americans. And it's just never brought up. And then it makes me look back on like so the only, there's actually, I can't say that. So on my mother's side, my great grandparents were actually alive, like, and up until I was like 12 or 13 or 14, somewhere in there. I can't remember. So like, I remember them vividly. And like, they told me stories about the Great Depression. Like my great grandfather was the last of 14 children, and he was born in 1926, 27, 28, somewhere in there.
Hmm.
But he literally grew up like during the thick of it, to say the least, which makes me, I have to think back, like I'm in a lot better position than
Sure.
he was in during
But
said
but
time.
just that concept, let me interrupt you there, sorry. The fact that you are, by comparison, better off, you might be slightly better off, yes. But if you think about the compounding effect of whatever the population at that time is, and throughout the last 100 years, how we as a species, we become more efficient and we progress. How much of that compounded 8 billion people's progress has been stifled by the fact that the money is corrupted? Like, yes, we're in a better place. We've moved forward despite the fact. But how much further ahead would we be if there weren't these centralized power structures that were stealing people's time, effort, energy, and labor?
Yeah, it
Y-
fundamentally works against the ability of human beings to engage in free market economics
So,
and free market
so
interactions and transactions,
yeah,
which again, as the what we need today is far different than what we needed 1,000 years ago. And again, there are items that are necessary. Like nobody can just put this lamp together. Like the division of labor is extremely important.
Sure.
And then the lubricant for the division of labor, meaning all the people that go into putting this computer or all the companies that go into making the individual parts for this computer or your car or whatever, is in some cases heavily stifled
Right.
by the fact that money, the money we are using is inefficient.
Yeah. So yeah, you're better in the sense that your grandfather couldn't have a conversation like we're having, where we're 600-700 miles apart. But how much of your life do you have to, quote unquote, give to someone else in order to maintain this better lifestyle?
So
Think
it's
about how much time of your week you have to give away for that.
almost the entirety of it, which
So
is,
how
yeah.
much better is your life?
Yeah, yeah, you are exactly right. Like I do think about this a lot. Like, everybody's like, "Oh, we live in the most," which we do live in the most advanced portion of human history. But like fundamentally, I'm still having to, and I
Give
don't
parts
say,
of your
yeah,
finite life
yeah,
as a
that, yeah,
percentage, a huge percentage.
yeah,
It hasn't reduced.
and
That
it's really
percentage
the
has
same.
increased.
Yeah, it's really almost the same as, I mean, obviously you were in a more agricultural society in the 20s in America, where a lot of people were actually working 6, 7 days a week
Right.
tending to their farms. I'm pretty sure that his family was an agricultural family. But that whole point is like, again, it's really the same amount of time has to be ultimately used up in order to just maintain this. Again, we have cool things, like, don't get me wrong, but like
Yeah.
fundamentally, it's the same level. And I'm not a socialist by any means, so please don't take this the wrong way. But it is question like of 1928. We're almost 100 years removed from that. Like, same amount of time, same expenditures, everything to just
Just
eat,
fact.
sleep, and eat the main basics of life. Eat, sleep, and drink water. Fundamentally the same thing. And a
Yeah.
little bit of entertainment.
But fundamentally, think about the example of 100 years ago. These people that had to work 6-7 days a week on the farm, and then you factor in all the efficiencies and the technologies and the advancements that we have made to make whatever we needed to provide the goods and the basic raw material goods and services for our lives to be, livable. You factor 100 years of progress with 8 billion people, or whatever the the population was during that 100 years, and we're still in the same place where the majority of people now still have to work 6-7 days a week. Like you would expect that, with the efficiencies that we made, we probably only need to work 1 or 2 days, and most people don't need to work. But the fact that they're stealing the money, is keeping, with all these advancements, we still have to give our whole life away, or a huge percentage of our life away. That's the concept.
It's almost as if there's a entity that almost steals time and productivity gains through inflation. Again, in a true natural free market where the money supply is completely finite, or at least known, as in what it is going to expand by. In that society, you would have, and a society where there is no form of regulatory capture, you would have hundreds and hundreds of individuals actively competing to bring the best product and service to market in the most efficient, cheapest way possible, and with the best products physically put together. Again, you look at some of the materials of that we are using today, and I'll actually talk about this later. But like a lot of what you buy today is far shittier than
Yeah.
what. See, like I have a cabinet. I look at this cabinet. This is just where my brain goes. It's terrible, but I have a cabinet in my kitchen, and I like can push in the side of it, and it flexes. I'm like, this is not at all. This is literally a piece of shit, and I paid $200 for it.
But
Like,
even just to go back to your point, you said, well, if we have a fixed supply of monetary units, and then your mind still jumped to, okay, but even if we didn't, we at least knew what it would grow by. But for this unit to grow by something, if we knew what it was going to be grown by, someone would be able to grow it, and they would have the power to grow it. Why would anyone need to have the power to grow it?
it's
It's
because no one's ever thought of that. It's just
yeah,
where we are. No one thinks about it, and I didn't
it's
think about it for the longest time. So I
it's the
understand.
greatest propaganda psyop the world has ever known. Like, I'm listening to these economists give their perspective on, Federal Reserve and the new, you know, chairman of the Federal Reserve, and we've got to the Federal Reserve has got to maintain order so that we don't have currency collapse. It's like, guys, do you not take a step back and think, who the fuck gives these people the power to be able to determine the livelihood of 8 billion people? Because essentially that is what they're doing with this incredible power that they have to manipulate currency. It's
Yeah.
it's mind-boggling once you've seen it.
And then like the other concept that like goes to my head all the time is there are so many people who physically work for 60, 70 years of their life. And then by the time that they are dead, there's literally nothing for them to pass on. Like that is fundamentally wild to think about. That you literally just like this whole system is set up perfectly to where your average Joe just says, hey, I'm going to dedicate my, literally my, well, as far as we know, our only life.
Hmm.
And at the end of it, I'm going to have ultimately potentially nothing to show for it. And
Exactly.
again, people who are, again, I completely understand that there are different levels of value that can be provided to an economy. And you can, I'm sure that some of these average Joes could still have done something more productive with their life and provided more value for others, thus having more
Hmm.
means at the end. But that is just a fundamentally wild concept. And I look, my other great grandfather, who I never met on my dad's side, one of my great grandfathers on my dad's side, never met him, but pretty much all of our, what I'm calling generational wealth, was built by him.
Right.
Oh, and he was also a chairman at the Charlotte Federal Reserve Branch.
So he was on the inside,
So
somewhat.
yes, literally on, yeah, quite literally on the inside. He was, and I'll give it to him. Like, I have no clue if he understood any of this, like how this worked, but like at some point in time, he honed in and said, hey, this is the most efficient thing to be a part of,
Yeah.
is a banking apparatus.
Right.
He was part of the, he lived in North Carolina for the majority of his life, but like worked his way up from pretty much a regular accountant at a car dealership in one of these small towns in North Carolina, all the way to, again, an executive at the Charlotte Federal Reserve Branch. Um, but in that meantime, it, he fundamentally realized how efficient it was in order to preserve time, wealth, and purchasing power by being the one who ultimately dishes out loans and dishes out money
Yeah.
and dishes out interest
Fractional
rates.
reserve
Yeah,
banking.
it was, and I hopefully I get to have a conversation with him one day. But like he, there was no better way to do things, and you had, again, probably the same amount of rough time that was
Hmm.
expended by him throughout his lifetime as his other family members who tended to a farm or whatever. Um, and it's all because you can work hard, but at some point in time you have to work smart as well.
I mean, there was a tweet that went out months ago, and it said, imagine working 40 years of your life and then the Federal Reserve printing 40% of the money supply within a year and basically stealing, 15 years of your life, just gone. All that 15 years of your life that you put in within a year is completely evaporated.
Yeah, if you look at money as nothing more than a representation of finite time and energy,
Yeah,
you
which it
expend your
is.
finite time and energy to acquire money. You want that money to be there 30 years from now, 40 years from now. And if
It's a
you,
representation of your
yeah,
what you've given to society.
yeah. And if you do,
The way you store
yeah,
the value that you've given. You've exchanged that value, and money is the mechanism that allows you, or should allow you, to be able to store that, to be able to use it at a future date.
and in all,
And it
and
gets debased.
in order to do that, you must acquire other items, other substitutes of money. They are
Yeah, in the
all
fiat system.
stocks. Yes, yeah. In this system that we live in, stocks, housing, gold, Bitcoin, whatever we want to talk about, are all fundamentally money substitutes because the currency that we are using cannot store value. But let's go to this video. I'll share my screen. This one's pretty phenomenal. Sure, it's the right screen here. Or I'm gonna start this. Let me know if you can hear it.
It is absolutely
Can you hear
horrible.
it?
Governments with pyramid schemes, they really seem to love them.
Yeah.
It's often the way I describe fiat currencies. It's just a pyramid scheme, basically. If you're close to the money printer, you get rich. If you're far from it, you get poor at the expense of those close to it.
Wow.
So
help me to understand, since we're on, and you can, let's leave it in the show. Help me to understand Bitcoin and all of this. I'm ignorant to a lot of this stuff, but what do you think is the psychology behind some of this? Why is it so powerful? Why is it now?
Let me explain the problem. Like Bitcoin is the solution to the problem of money, but I think a lot of people don't understand the problem of money. And there's a lot of different ways to come at it, but I'm going to try to give you the way that's hopefully relevant to what we've been talking about. And a newer way I've been thinking about money myself recently is like, okay, you have an organization called the central bank. It uses the force of law to prevent any other business from getting into the currency production game, right? So it's a centrally planned institution. Imagine if we only had one business that could make cars, and anyone else try to get in the car making game got shut down by the force of law, with coercion or violence. Well, you wouldn't have free market capitalism. You would have Soviet style economy, basically.
Right. Yeah.
More accurately, a diseconomy and its long-term consequences that it fails, as the USSR showed us. We have the central bank in every modern economy. So if money is one half of every transaction, then one half, we're 50% communist, basically, or Marxist.
Wow.
And I'm not embellishing. This is in Marx's 1848 Manifesto of the Communist Party. Measure number 5 was the central bank. It's like, this scheme only works if we have a state monopoly on cash and credit. All right. So we have centrally planned money in an otherwise free market world, although free market things tend to fall apart in a world with centrally planned money. Now that's kind of just the rough institutional description of it.
And is this all, were we running this way pre-Federal Reserve?
So the first central bank, I think it's I hope I'm saying this right, Bank of Antwerp, may have been the Bank of Amsterdam. One of the two was like the first central bank 500, 600-ish years ago, but the same shareholders of those central banks. Then the Bank of England is the one that came after that, which was the real big one. The Rothschilds are the big famous name that are known to own this bank, but there's a handful of other families that also own it. And apparently they own all the central banks in the world. So they have, there's 300 people, more or less, that have like 50% of the world's wealth.
Okay.
And
I didn't know any of this, by the way.
Through this institution called the central bank, basically. Now, if you wanted to read about it, this book here, The Creature from Jekyll Island, is fantastic. I would start there. There's a lot of other books that go into the central banking rabbit hole.
Okay.
What I'd like to tie into the context of our conversation, though, is I've recently been thinking about the power to print money is sort of like a pseudo form of mind control. Because if you can just print money, well, then you can, print money out of thin air, basically, right? So, and to be more specific, I call it counterfeiting currency. So if you or I counterfeit a $100 bill, well, then we get in trouble, right? That activity is the exact same activity that the Federal Reserve is doing by the trillion, right? There's no economic distinction whatsoever. There's just a legal distinction. I like to say it's which way the guns are pointed, right? Like they're pointed at us, telling us we can't do them. But inside the central bank and the shareholders of the central bank, they do get to profit ad infinitum from currency counterfeiting.
Okay.
So if you can print money out of thin air, and money is the thing that can be used to acquire any good or service in the marketplace, well, then you can print goods and services out of thin air, up to and including media institutions, media influence, fake research, fake science, fake news, propaganda, like all of these things, all of these lies. Yeah, these lies, which the money, the counterfeited currency is a lie in and of itself. Like it's a debt-based money. Which if money is the final extinguisher of debt, how can money be debt-based? That doesn't make any sense. You can never use it to settle with finality. So the money's a lie, but then it leads to the generation, or it funds the generation of all these other institutionalized lies. And so what happened during the pandemic? We printed $8 trillion in the United States. We printed $8 trillion. So the Federal Reserve is founded in 1913. Pandemic starts in 2020, so it's 107 years. I think we increased the dollar supply like 40% in a year. So of 107 years of dollar production, almost, one, whatever that is, 40% of every dollar in circulation was printed within that 12, 18-month period.
Whoa.
And the other half of the dollars were printed over 107 years. So it's like this.
And this wasn't like
So yeah, that also sums up relatively well what we're trying to hit at. Robert is extremely well versed in all of this and various other topics, and I've learned a lot just from listening to him. But it is absolutely absurd that last part that he's talking about, and the part where he kind of listed off all of the various. Again, if we are still in a current state of the U.S. dollar, that if there was $5,000 that were just dropped down into the middle of New York City, you're going to have people fighting over it.
Mm-hmm.
Fist fighting over the $5,000 of cash sitting on the ground. So again, the incentive is still there to accept dollars for anything. Now, when you have the ability to print said dollars, you can literally create quite literally anything that you want, solely due to the fact that there are individuals and businesses and various other corporations and entities that can do most anything. We are in a society where if you want anything done, whether it's a form of media, a law, or an action done, physical coercion done, there are entities that can do that. And when you have the ability to create money, you can fundamentally get them to do anything that you want.
Yeah.
Especially when you also have the rule of law that can be manipulated to make sure that, oh, it is now legal for me to do X, Y, or Z. It's very, very difficult to wrap your head around at first, but like there is one of the ways that I think about it is a plane that's flying from LA to Tokyo has to course correct 900 times.
Mm-hmm.
So
Minor
just to get
corrections.
minor corrections. And going back to the book that I was talking about earlier, The Discourses Concerning Government, like if you get out of that 2-generation window and you do not understand the minor course corrections that have to be first observed and then acted upon if they are not going in the direction that they need to, you lose all sense of direction when it comes to the true classical republic that the two greatest empire or the two greatest nation states ever to exist, America I don't know what date we want to use, pre-1900, or the Roman Empire pre-Caesar. There are understandings that have to be repetitively carried down, and not only carried down, but repetitively carried down in the correct manner. So like you see all these and I think that movies are a great representation for this. You see a lot of these movies like Robin Hood or Braveheart or any of these other movies where you see like tyrants like pretty much making sure that their kids who are going to be the next in line understand and view how they rule. And again, you have, and when that happens, and it's what we see in modern politics in the U.S., like the I don't know, let's just give an example. The kid who works, the 25-year-old who works for a long time congressman or senator, ultimately might want to make a run at it. And where are they deriving their ways to do it from is these corrupt individuals who, by any means necessary, make sure that they are the ones who can, kind of back to Robert's point there, they are the ones there to make sure that they can get paid to make sure that the correct course of actions are lined up to make sure that those with the ability to create money can ultimately conjure up anything they would like, or any thought, or any physical item, or any narrative. Narrative is a key one there.
That narrative. I don't think any one of us have given enough credence to the fact that we are living in the greatest propaganda psyop the world has ever seen, with this entity that has the ability to control all of media and has this enormous, unstoppable budget to keep pushing its narrative to make sure that society as a whole stays in its little box to keep the status quo so that they can keep their ability to print money. I think if there was a human collective consciousness awakening of some sort, I would say if people just figured this out and opted out of this, and then realized that, as Robert said right in the beginning, Bitcoin is the solution to the problem that they don't even know they have. When you realize that this is the problem and it all starts making sense, and how this money printing cancer just filters its way through society with every domino downstream of it, you start understanding why the world looks like what it does right now. And once you go slightly deeper and realize that Bitcoin, the concept of Bitcoin, just take the whole fact out. I mean, I was talking to my brother yesterday. Let me just read this tweet to you, because I said to him, measured in dollars, Bitcoin hasn't done great right now in a very, very short term time frame. But I said to him, I'm not even bullish on Bitcoin. I'm bullish on a decentralized protocol that uses cryptography and proof of work that cannot be co-opted and has a fixed supply. That's the idea. Every time people say, well, yeah, Bitcoin can be copied, or, it can't be copied, because all you're buying into, quote unquote, is this protocol idea. It's exactly the same as the rules of chess. Chess has been played for, I don't know how many 100 years. The rules are the rules. I don't think the rules change much. But if you come up and say, well, I've got this new thing that this piece can move differently, you're not playing chess. And so you're out. And Bitcoin is basically just this protocol that is going to impose discipline on this. It's a technology that's going to hopefully impose this discipline on this fiat cancer of centralized power. And when you think what the downstream effects of that can be for society, fuck, it's scary.
Yeah, you have to get back to like the fundamental question of what enables governments to exist. And it's first the ability to tax. And then second, the ability to, if you cannot bring in enough taxes, you then have to have the ability to print money.
Yeah.
In
And so
order to
what
stay
enables
afloat.
governments to not only exist, but to, exist for prolonged, amounts of time, and what enables governments to incrementally increase its power over its subjects over time. Because the trend only goes one way. With a fiat currency, governments only increase their power and ability to enforce whatever agenda or mandate they have on its civilians with this fiat currency.
Yep, you would be exactly right. Here's a fun modern comparison quote from Sidney's book. This was, again, for reference. His book was dated to be written somewhere between, we don't exactly know, somewhere between 1681 and 1683. But this quote, literally, I thought I was reading a book from 2025. If any man think that this evil of advancing officers for personal respects, favor, or corruption is not of great extent, I desire him to consider that the officers of state, courts of justice, church, armies, fleets, and corporations are of such number and power as wholly to corrupt a nation when they themselves are corrupted, and will ever be corrupted when they attain their offices by corruption. So again, you have regulatory capture on, and this is straight from Robert's thoughts here, you have regulatory capture on the ability to create purchasing power, not money. I think that people, when you use the term money, I think that kind of gets distorted, but purchasing power, the ability, let's just use my example. I'm a 9-to-5 employee with a side business. But my purchasing power is totally notated by my boss and what he gives me as a raise.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's just go upstream of that and upstream of that and upstream of that. You get to the federal government. What is their purchasing power notated by? It is notated by, first, our trust in the currency, and then second, how much do I want to print?
Yeah.
Again, because an economy can run on any amount of monetary units.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a point where you get to this inflationary side of things where they have to increase it at an exponential rate in order to stay afloat. This obviously, at some point in time, we will get to the point where the dollar hyperinflates I
Yeah.
I wholly believe that will happen in my lifetime. I don't think that they can kick the can that far. Who knows? But
It's
they do have,
mathematics.
yeah,
Yeah. There's a point in time where, and we've seen it in history over, many, many times. The Roman Empire is one of my favorite examples because they were incredibly powerful. Their power and reach expanded over a long period of time until it didn't. And it was because maths was counted against them when they started, they manipulated the currency beyond what anyone would accept. And then they say, I'm not willing to accept this. And when enough people do that, boom, power's gone.
yeah. I think it'll be this Gen Z millennial. I think Gen Alpha is right behind us, but I think that there will be a point where like the latter part of Gen Z and the latter part and I guess the beginning of Gen Alpha kind of come of age. I think that there will be a lot of questioning, like, why the hell am I doing this? Why am I showing up to work every day to literally just go home and live with these 4 other individuals that I'm sharing an apartment with? Like, what is going on? And again, like if you not dating back, but looking back to like my earlier comments, like everything is getting more efficient. Everything has gotten more efficient. Obviously, you and I know that things could be more efficient based off of how society could have played out for the last 100-ish years.
Mm-hmm.
But you are doing more for less. And that fundamental concept, look at the just basic average income and the square footage that it can purchase. I don't even know if there will be an ability to have an average income and purchase square footage in the future.
I saw a tweet yesterday where it said if the average house price had stayed in line with the average income, the average house price right now would be $138,000, and we've got an average house price right now in America of like 600. And
Yeah.
so that
And if you
separation is the gap.
And if you look at it from the perspective of just measuring monetary expansion, which again, I can't exactly tell you whether or not I don't trust the government in any form or fashion. I can't tell you if these numbers are accurate or not, but like if you look at the Fed's M2 money supply and you just look at what that has increased year over year by, and again, if this can work, inflationary economics and inflationary monetary system, can work so long as everyone else's wages, which a lot of people don't have control over, or increase at the same rate. So again, 7.1% CAGR on the M2 money supply from August of 1971 to November of 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So over that 4-year period, 53, something like that. If everybody's wages, were raising at 7.1%, everything would be perfectly fine.
So
But that's not the case.
You run into 3 problems there. One, you got to trust the people that are increasing the money supply by 7, that it is actually 7 and it's not 8. 2, you got to make sure that everyone else does get the 7% increase, and that's not going to happen. And 3, the problem is they wouldn't let that happen because if everyone goes up at the same amount, they're not able to increase the differential. And so what's the point in even doing it? So, you run into these concepts of like, the only reason they do that is to increase the differential so that they can keep increasing their power. Optically, people think that they're doing okay because optically in their bank account, the number of units is not reducing, but they don't look at those number of units as purchasing power. Because when they make that mental switch to purchasing power, their purchasing power is getting eroded.
I try to tell my wife, and she's actually come a long way in understanding this, but like she got a raise, and I just did I pulled this chart up and I just did a basic understanding, and I said, hey, you have to match this percentage here, and she was about 2 or 3 percentage points lower. So if you map that out over a 40-year period of someone's working life, it explains perfectly why so many people are relatively in the same position or in a lesser position for most of their entire working life. Like I asked my grandmother this, and she's 84, 85. And I was just like, hey, she's like, oh, but my portfolio, the S&P, it's all increased by whatever 100 or 200%, 300% that's happened over the last 40 years of her life, because she's well into retirement. My grandfather's retired.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. And I was like, do you feel 3 times more wealthy? She was like, no. And I was like, exactly. And so again, trying to, it is so fundamentally difficult for you to look somebody in the eyes and say, you did not make more money last year. If they tell you what their raise, and again, I'm just using the average employee here. It's great if you own private equity or you're a business owner and you can immediately adjust, which then you get run into the issue of, yeah, you can adjust what your costs are, but then you still are trying to provide value, and there could be either a business that undercuts you or who you were attempting to sell to can no longer afford your goods and services. So you run into that, but like the general 9-to-5 employee that makes up 80, 90% of America, like you must, purchasing power on your end must increase at or above the expansion of the monetary system, or you will fall behind. Because money and the monetary units that exist in an economy, first off, we can get into, I won't even get into this, but you disincentivize and you pretty much derail an economy to produce goods cheaper, faster, better under a system of monetary inflation. But second off, you then run into the issue of you are falling behind, plain and simple. You have no other choice but an economy that is producing now less because there is a whole structure of disincentives, an economy that is producing less but is being measured in more monetary units and producing relatively the same, or at least a smaller percentage than the monetary supply is being expanded by. You run into the issue of now there are lesser goods and services being made relative to the money that we are measuring it in. So then you look at a traditional supply and demand chart that everyone should have at least seen in Econ 101. I really start to question whether or not any schools but mine showed that. But price is a given. And that's an issue. Price is a given because the measurement, I think there is nothing else in this world that you measure things in that isn't fixed, except prices. And people say that, it's measured in dollars. But like, yes, like that is fixed. Like the term dollar is fixed, but the supply of dollars matters. And it is always going to matter and always has mattered, but nobody ever looks at it.
It's funny. What did we name this podcast?
Yeah. Measured in what?
Exactly. It's the fundamental question.
Measuring your entire life in a currency that is expanding means that in order to have the same relative purchasing power that you had when you were 25, you must expand your purchasing power, which means you must bring in the same amount as in which the dollar supply is expanding by every year, or you are falling behind. That's
the thing. I mean, your wife thinks she made, I'm not knocking your wife. Many people think they are making more money when they get a 3% raise. Measured in what? If you measure it in dollars against the supply increase of dollars, you're going backwards. People don't get that. They don't want to get it because they've lived in this matrix of incredible propaganda. It's uncomfortable to understand that. It's a fascinating subject for me. It's captivated me. It's crazy.
And you have, again, I wholeheartedly believe this, that a lot of these events are completely pre-planned. I think this thing in Minneapolis with this guy, just looking at the videos and understanding all of this, I think that was completely set up. Like, who knows if he was actually killed? Like, we have no clue who these people are taking these videos. We have no clue if they were paid off to just be there and this guy's acting dead. Like, this wasn't in a crowd.
Yeah.
And it seemed very, very fake.
Can we verify this? Can we verify it?
Yeah, exactly. We can't. We cannot verify whether or not that this person was A, actually killed, and B, whether or not it was all staged.
Yeah.
You can't. You cannot
all
verify
we've seen
that.
Is 2 or 3 videos with at max 30 people in the vicinity.
Yeah.
That could have been staged in a Hollywood studios.
Exactly. We have no clue if that was even in Minnesota.
And 99.9% of people will say that is the most ridiculous take. Of course he was. I saw it with my own eyes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Was Charlie Kirk murdered? We don't know.
We don't. Yeah. That one,
we don't know.
Ballistics don't lie, but whatever. We're not going to get into that. But
the 30-06 bouncing off a neck vertebra. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do me
Well,
a
yeah,
favor.
that makes sense. But you get into this entire system where instances like this, instances like Don Lemon, who that was also like, it is just political partisan theater.
I was
It's
just going to
all it
say,
is.
it's theatrics. It's cult
It is.
theatrics.
And now you
And
have,
it's tribalism.
now you have Republicans. Now you have Republicans defending Donald Trump's and Kash Patel coming out and saying that you can't concealed carry or
Concealed
open carry at a protest. Like,
Yeah,
first off, what Republican are you?
exactly.
Second off, now you have Donald Trump. All he's arrested are individuals that just incite the left to be pissed off. And I'm the left. Both of them are on the left, but just in a modern sense is left and right. We'll talk about that. There's a much broader picture that is never painted. But
On
all
purpose.
that it is in completely on purpose that he not know, the war criminals and all these other people around the globe that are actual problems. No, we're going to arrest Don Lemon for doing his thing in a church. And again, we can't even verify whether or not that was entirely staged.
Exactly.
Like
They could
it
all
is-
be fucking puppets, state
Yeah.
actors, bad actors, and they're just watching us watch them.
No, it's literally a massive, there's a massive puppeteering scheme that is controlling the right, what we're going to call the modern right, and the modern left. And it's the same entity. It doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden or
Both sides of the same
Pam
fucking
Bondi or
coin.
whoever. It's the same thing. It's the
It's
same
all-
thing. And when one gets into power, it's going to do things to piss off the other side. And when the other gets into power, it's not going to actually fundamentally do anything to produce a viable society that actually pushes things forward. Look at I ask every person who is hell-bent on these topics, like, it is truly Republican versus Democrat. Like, no, it's not. And I asked them, is the average 30-year-old better today than they were in 1990? No, not by any fucking chance. And you have had this entire segment of, you had what? From 1990, you had Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump. So it's been almost split dead even. These people don't push anything forward for society by any fucking means.
No.
And it is so infuriating to see the voters, who people thinking that all you're doing is voting for the symptoms of the issue. You are not voting you have no voting rights over the Federal Reserve and the chairman who ultimately induce monetary policy. You don't.
There's a financial illiteracy aspect and just a general misunderstanding of how things work. Once again, through propaganda. The right thinks we live in this free market capitalism, but they have no clue about what the Federal Reserve is, so they can't answer the central problem of central planning. And it's socialism or what's the other one? Fascism. It's all the same side of two sides of the same coin. It's government power and government being able to decide what they can do with your purchasing power and manipulate society in order to maintain power. It's simple as that.
The fundamental basis of communism would mean that you would have to have virtuous individuals who are not self-interested running the show, which
Every
no
human is
being-
self-interested.
every human being is self-interested, and they're going to take advantage when they are put in positions of arbitrary power to benefit themselves and their family, because every person fundamentally, and this is something that pisses me off, but like, every human being wants to preserve, or at least I think they should. I think it has been completely nerfed in a bunch of different fashions, but like, every person usually wants to preserve their bloodline.
Yeah. That is an inherent.
Give me the ability to preserve my bloodline for the next 40, which isn't going to happen under a dollar system, but give me that ability and I'm going to do it. Like,
Exactly.
no human can be given that set of incentives and act on the betterment of the public. That, again, that book talks about how you had societies that were stooped in this stoic, virtuous manner, that they knew that even though I could arbitrarily use this to my advantage, what is best for the longevity of everyone here. Because again, then you start to split into a path where it's okay, I can be completely perfect and act in the best interest of everyone else. And that's going to extend, obviously, up to a certain point. We've never been able to create a society that has the incentives to extend forever in that fashion. Or I can steal do this over, and this ends much quicker. I mean, people don't realize you can't naturally steal from somebody or a large group of individuals forever. It would be like taking blood from you and I a little bit at a time. It's literally
Eventually you
bloodletting.
die. Yeah.
Yeah, you eventually die. Yeah, you
And
were
then we start
exactly
again.
right.
Eventually you die.
It's
Okay. Two other things. Davos, that clip drove me mad, where Brian Armstrong is speaking to the central banker, and the central banker says he trusts independent central bankers with the issuance of fiat currency more than some independent issuer of Bitcoin. So first of all, that is either a complete act, which I believe it is, or grossly negligent and ignorant about how the protocol of Bitcoin works. That was one thing that's funny. And the other thing is gold has gone on a complete tear and then retraced 10% in the last day. Went to $5,600 an ounce and then back to $5,000 an ounce. And the amount of market cap that it evaporated is bigger than the total market cap of Bitcoin in one day. So we are living in just cuckoo land. I mean, it's a joke.
yeah. I need to look more into this and how this works. But again, if you have the ability to print money and you can print goods and services, I'm assuming that you can print a derivatives market.
Yes.
I have no clue how markets are set. This is so ignorant of me, and I probably should know this, but I think that it's ultimately is not going to matter one day how dollar-denominated markets are set. But if you have the ability to create money and then create derivatives to short said items, I think the government is going to do two things.
That is suppression. What we just saw there, I'm convinced is suppression.
Yeah, they're going to suppress these monetary substitutions, which Bitcoin is the ultimate solution, not even a substitution. They're going to suppress the dollar price of that because everyone is still measuring their life in dollars. And then B, they're going to inevitably kick the can down the road with the bond market, and they're going to buy bonds in every sneaky form and fashion as humanly possible to make sure that those bond yields stay down so they can continue to roll over the debt and pay it at a lower interest rate.
Keep the house of cards going.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that there's an incentive for, if you buy gold, there's an incentive for you to not take delivery of it. They are paying you a monetary premium, whatever that looks like, to not take physical delivery of the gold. The amount of paper claims on the actual physical substances is at a ratio I don't think we even have a clue about. And when that house of cards comes down, when there is a bank run on gold and they cannot fulfill the amount of claims that they have sold, that's when Bitcoin takes over.
Yeah.
Because and it has to be Bitcoin in self-custody, on the chain, verified, validated, sitting in a cold wallet that you and only you or the people that you trust hold the keys, private keys to that wallet. That's Bitcoin. Everything else is, once again, a paper derivative and a promise, and it's owed to you. It's not the actual real thing.
There are not enough chairs to sit down when this game of musical chairs ends, whenever that is. Whether it's through whether it's through a inflationary depression, which I think is the most likely outcome. There is arguments to say that we already are in one. But
I mean, we've been in one since 1913. It's just now, here we are.
Yeah.
And how much steeper the curve gets for us, who knows?
Yeah.
But, just having this conversation, because you second guess yourself. It's human nature to think, well, fuck me, gold. We're definitely hard money advocates for sure.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is, when you've done all the research, way better than gold for number of reasons. And we can do a show on just that these days, just comparing gold to Bitcoin. I mean, it's an obvious one at this stage. But then you second guess yourself and say, oh, fucking gold, is gone through the roof. But first of all, you need to now you get into the trap of well, I have to take physical delivery of it. There's a huge counterparty risk to that. And how do I transact in a piece of gold? What am I going to take a knife and shave off sections of it? I mean,
yeah, that's
just the Bitcoiners have just got to be patient here. Just low time preference. Wait for this, because there are going to be a lot of disappointed gold holders because they don't hold it. They hold paper.
Yeah. The end game of the gold bugs and the silver bugs is a monetary system, and I'll repeat this every time that this gets brought up. The end game of gold and silver bugs is a monetary system in which has already failed. We have attempted
Exactly.
to run a monetary system. The moment that communication is instant, there is a need for instant settlement or almost instant settlement. And it is very difficult to instantly settle a transaction in gold when you are dealing with someone in the middle of in India or Indonesia or Australia or New Zealand, or pick the furthest place that's geographically away from the East Coast in the US. You can't. You cannot.
Even,
you have. There's
even
a.
you and me, I can't settle with you in gold. You're 600 miles away. I
can drive down to Florida and pick it up from you.
What, are we going to do a transaction like that?
Yeah, 7 hours.
Yeah,
or
we're so efficient as a species. We've got technology that can do all this stuff, but now we have to physically drive to settle. The final settlement piece is an interesting concept to think about and talk. When you really start questioning people on stuff, final settlement. I like that topic. All right, final thoughts for the week. Give me some white pills.
No, I mean, these are all white pills. Like, again, humanity is absolutely
fucked. But
fucked
Bitcoin
if Bitcoin doesn't win. That's my theory on all
that is
this.
Scary.
Yeah. And I know that sounds absolutely absurd to anybody who's not versed in this, but like,
I cannot wait for 40, 50 years from now for people to watch this podcast and say, holy shit, how did these guys get onto this? Because the rest of the society was sleeping and they were still settling transactions in fucking paper that the government prints.
Yeah.
By the way, what's a government?
Yeah, I would say, well, I can tell you what a government isn't, and this is kind of along the ideas of you reap what you sow. This is another quote from this book. Fruits are always of the same nature, with the seeds and roots from which they come, and trees are known by the fruits they bear. As man begets a man and beast a beast, that society of men which constitutes a government upon the foundations of justice, virtue, and the command of good will always have men to promote these ends. Ask yourself if what I just outlined sounds anything like the 2026 American government.
No, not even close.
Not even the slightest.
We are living in propaganda psyop. It's a joke.
We are. I think at the end of that thing that I did the video with Robert, he literally says we are living in the. And the other guy is I don't know what his background is, but he apparently had done some work for the government on like pretty much how to coerce information out of people. So psyoping people into giving them information or manufacturing consent. And both of them at the end were like, we're living in a massive psyop. If you believe that it is right versus left, you're delusional. You're completely misconstrued.
You're intellectually bankrupt.
Yeah, and I get it. I know why you were intellectually bankrupt, because I was intellectually bankrupt for the first 24 years of my life.
Yeah,
I wholeheartedly believed that Donald Trump was going to fix everything. And if you just look, and if you view this from the last year and a half, this man has had control of the executive branch, the Senate, and the House, I believe. I could be wrong. And the courts, and not a fucking thing has changed. Anything meaningful, nothing has changed. All he's come out is pretty much said is, hey, we're going to make sure that the price of housing never comes down. So good luck with private property rights. And this is another thing, like nation states and decentralized private property go hand in hand. The moment that private property is coerced to the top, there are bread lines and revolutions.
Yeah.
Another
fascinating concept is the concept of private property. I think that should be the next one. Final settlement, private property. Actually go deep into it and think about what that entails. All right, let's wrap it up.